Hey everybody, thanks for joining for another episode of Maps Are Dead with Mike D. It's all about navigating your life when your life has run off the map and no one can tell you to do. Kind of really excited to have this guest, Tanya Lama. Tanya, do you still you're married now, but you got my maiden name, but like what?
No,
Tanya Lama's.
I'm Tanya. Yeah, I'm Tanya Lama for life.
Oh
Yep.
gosh. Okay, Tanya. Okay, this is a fun story for me. Tanya and I met in the coldest place you can possibly meet in this tiny refugio camp on the backside of the Circuito, the big circuit at Torres del Paine National Park in
Yeah.
Patagonia in Chile. And Tanya was on her honeymoon. You and Toby. And we're at this like nothing outpost camp. Like literally, we're gonna go up over the Great Glacier. It's like a 15-hour hike the next day. And you guys were a day ahead of us, I think. You've been
We were
like
a
a day
day
ahead
ahead
of
of you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we caught up to you. No, you caught up to us because you guys were on
Yes.
the move.
We were
And
trying to move fast.
we'd never done the circuit before and we didn't have much experience like backcountry backpacking like this. And we like locked onto your group and we were like, we're following this guy. Like
We ended
he
up
knows what
because
he's
Roberto and I had done it. We had Nate. There was the three of us. But then you and Toby were there, and Justin, and this other couple from New Zealand or Australia.
Australia, I think it was.
Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, you got kept in touch with you guys and Justin. Justin was working and coming up to Minneapolis. So, in case you're wondering, if you hang out with me, we're gonna meet. You're gonna make friends all over the world randomly.
Totally. Totally.
And then during COVID, we got to say hi because I'm from Maine. Toby grew up in Maine, and are you guys back in Maine? No,
We're part-time, yeah. So we're doing summers
Okay.
up there, which has been really fun.
which is
Yeah.
not bad.
The
And so we saw each
academic
other in COVID.
schedule. That's one of the
But
perks.
But literally on your honeymoon, we hiked the rest of the trip around, like, and so we had drinks together in Puerto Natales afterwards.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna start. I'm gonna start doing these treks. In fact, we're gonna announce one like spring of like, which is gonna be like a non-W trek, which is like do the towers and then get a Puma Safari, a glacier walk, and a barbecue in. We're gonna start doing these in March, so you guys got to come for one of our trips.
Oh yeah, we'd be psyched. We're
So
eager to
exciting.
get back for sure.
But we have a Chilean connection because your family is Chilean, yes?
Yes, yeah. Both my parents are Chilean from like the Santiago area. We just named our second son Santiago, which
Santiago.
is sort of a little, you
So
know,
great.
ode to our Chilean connection. And yeah,
And by trade, though, I tell my friends, let me guess, I met the preeminent scientist on the lynx cat while on the backside of Patagonia. And that's kind of your specialty, right? When we met, you were doing your PhD in research. Professionally, give me the byline of like, hey, this is what I do professionally as well as other things in my life.
yeah. I'm a professor of genomics at Smith College, and I specialize in evolutionary and conservation genomics. So essentially, using genomics or genetics as a tool to inform conservation for threatened and endangered species. And I primarily work in mammals, so I've worked on all kinds of different species, but wildcats is what I did my PhD on, and now I work a lot with bats. So
That's right, bats. Bats was the
Yeah.
other one.
Yeah.
Because weren't you off to Spain for bats?
Yep,
when
I
COVID hit?
did. I did a Fulbright in Spain, and then we did some postdocing, and then I started my assistant professorship, and I work primarily with bats these days, but still working on conservation. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so when I put this, I'm like, hey, we're going to start a new podcast, people in transition. And Tanya, you'd never actually done CliftonStrengths. So I'm sure I'd talked about it at some point or another on the trip, but you'd never actually done it until now.
No, I mean, I had never even, so learning a little bit about Mike and sort of what he does in terms of coaching people through their careers, coming up in academia, I was like, we need that. We need that badly. So I've always kind of kept tabs on your
Yeah.
coaching sessions with your other clients. And I was really excited to do Clifton because I've heard from my folks who work in industry that it's really powerful and, can help you learn a lot about yourself.
Sweet.
So I was happy to do it.
Fun. We'll unpack these. And so for those of you following along at home, because everybody's like wondering, hey, does this person have some of my themes? Tanya came out with her top 5: achiever, relator, learner, significance, focus, and we'll unpack those as the conversation goes. But again, achiever, learner, relator, significance, that was pretty unique as well, and focus there. You're in transition though, a little bit. So but I like to ask the question over this hour, because it's not just to unpack, I want it to be like useful to you. If you could imagine this was a coaching session, what would be the most useful conversation we could anchor to? If we could provide any context using your strengths on something you're navigating, what's the most useful conversation we could have in the next
Yeah,
15
I
minutes
mean,
or so?
doing the strengths, I think what I've been reflecting on a lot this past year is my role as a mentor, like not necessarily my role as a researcher or a scientist, but more my role as a mentor and an educator, because that's kind of a newer role that I'm stepping into as a
Yeah.
an early career professor, where I teach courses in genomics, but I also advise undergrads and grad students, and also postdocs who are kind of moving through big career transition points themselves.
Yeah.
There was this one question in particular when I was doing the CliftonStrengths that was essentially like, it's like a sliding bar, right? Like, what do you more, what do you have more of an
Yeah.
affinity for, type thing.
Right.
And the question was essentially, do you see your role is to challenge or encourage? And that for me was really interesting because I like, my gut was to do challenge. And I've just been like reflecting on that as a mentor and a professor recently, because it is interesting that that's just sort of my instinct is more to challenge than to encourage.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you find that when you're advising postdocs as part of your role, obviously, and you're doing research and writing and
yeah.
teaching, what do you finding they want? I mean, when you become, right, because you're on a tenure track, so this is part of what happens, and then you become a professor, and then you're only advising PhD. I'm sure it's a different level of mentorship. When they set you up, do they say, hey, by the way, this is how you mentor postdocs? You know, like,
No.
do they give you, like, what do you get? Like, what kind of context do you get versus what you actually find? You're sitting down with them. Like, what are you being asked to provide for for these
Yeah, I
students?
mean, so postdocs are in a really interesting career transition point because they've typically just finished their PhD. And the postdoc is really only valuable from the perspective of academia. Like, it doesn't really gain you much in terms of your sort of hireability in industry. And so typically the people that I mentor that are going for a postdoc are doing a postdoc because they want to land an academic job as a faculty or a research scientist in academia. And so that's sort of the end goal, is they're sort of trying to chart a path towards becoming a professor.
Sure.
But I will say, like, coming into academia, there isn't a lot of training in terms of how to mentor these folks or how to mentor anyone, to be honest. And
Educate, don't bother mentorship. Just give them the
right.
data. Keep
But
going.
it is it's a big responsibility, and it also is one of the primary ways in which I spend my time is mentoring early career people and making their next big sort of decision.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. And so do they know it? What? That's why, as a professional coach, it's always interesting for me is there's the clients who come in and say, like, I'm trying to climb that mountain. I don't really know how to get there. I'm trying to figure out how to launch a thing, quit a job, invent a thing, reorganize a team, whatever. Then there's those who are like, something's off and I have no idea what's off. Like they don't, they really, and they aren't, and so then there's some who they don't know what they don't know. Are they coming to you because they're trying to go, how do I craft a path? Because I would love to be a teacher at Colby, or I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
or I'm going to teach here. Like, are they asking you to help navigate that, or are they asking you to be a sounding board?
I think it's a little bit of both. I have sort of postdocs and mentees that come at it from both sides that are new to this. And then other times I have postdocs or mentees that are almost like, they're putting applications out, but they're not getting bites, or they're not getting interviews, or kind of, they're a little bit stalled out from that perspective. And the way that we navigate, especially the tenure track search, which is like looking for a tenure track faculty position,
Yeah,
I think one thing that really scares postdocs when they have just finished their PhD is they think, oh, I'm not ready, right? Like, I'm not
yeah,
really ready to apply when I get my next paper out, when I get the next big profile thing, you know what I mean? Or once
right,
I'm done with this postdoc 2 years from now, then maybe I'll be ready. But that's like a
yeah.
total myth, right?
You're
That's
right.
a
We're
total,
never ready.
you're never going to be ready, right? And it
Right.
actually, what I tell the students in particular is like, if you look at the data, the further out you move from the date of your PhD defense, the less likely you are to land a faculty job,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is sort of
Hard.
instills it, like lights a little fire under them because they're like, oh, like actually time is the enemy here, which is
Mm.
very weird compared to maybe other industries. But yeah, in academia, I'm like, no, 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 you have to strike while the iron is hot. And the iron is hot as soon as you come out of your PhD, essentially. And so that's
So
the one thing is that they never quite feel that they're ready. And so just convincing them that where you are today, just as you are, with the experience that you have gained, you're ready.
mhm. And so when the question comes up on the Clifton Strengths you're taking it, is your role encourage or challenge? Right? I think that was the ways it, and it stands out to you. Did it surprise you because because you had been the way before, or did it surprise you because you see yourself differently? Was it the question being asked for where you're like, actually, I think challenge is the default. Is that maturity and growth and things you've learned over the season, or is that something that you're like, you know what? I've always thought that was actually my best. Is that because I'm thinking through your themes? I'm like trying to think which was more dominant. Do you feel like that's always been there, or has that been something that you've developed, or did it surprise you?
I don't think it surprised me more than it like sort of highlighted it for me. I'm like, oh dang, like if those are the two ends of the spectrum, like I know I'm on the
Hmm.
challenge side of the spectrum. And I also, have been reflecting a lot on my teaching. So I'm coming out of my first 2 years of teaching, going into my third year. And I
Okay.
speak very openly about this with my colleagues in academia, but like I don't have great teaching reviews. And teaching reviews are, I mean, first of all, they're incredibly biased, right? Because they're
If you, I
conducted
like
by
you. If you like me, I like you.
exactly, but there's also like there's no incentive for completing the teaching review, and so oftentimes
Yeah.
the students who come and complete your teaching review are like pretty disgruntled with the way that you have been teaching and mentoring them.
Yeah. Right.
And so I, for the past couple of years, have been on what I'm calling a teaching journey, where I consulted a lot of my colleagues who are like
Hmm.
award-winning teachers on sort of the struggles that I've had and some of the feedback that I've gotten from students. And I do think there's sort of a disconnect there from like my gut instinct is to challenge, right? And I don't necessarily always step aside and see that maybe some of my mentees want more of that encouragement, right? And so I think it was just sort of a point of reflection for me in terms of thinking about like, first of all, why is my instinct to challenge more than
Yeah.
encourage from a mentorship perspective? And I think part of that is like my upbringing, like as a scientist and also just like a person, an immigrant woman,
Sure. Yeah. Right.
is to challenge more than encourage. But then also
Yeah.
just thinking about like, is that who I want to be? You know what I mean? Like as a mentor.
Yeah, and I think understanding what situations bring out the challenge, like because it's all in how you bring out the challenge. And I think if they, we're just using Gallup's question, and that may not be the approach of okay, I'm challenging all the mentees, but they're in that question where you're going, do they understand why I'm challenging them? Do they know the basis? Is the foundation of the challenge I'm bringing them there? Because I think part of what stands out to me in your profile right away, just to kind of talk through Clifton Strengths a little bit, is, and for those who follow along at home, if you're taking Clifton Strengths, there's 4 domains, 4 big buckets. But the system, but specifically, we're not equally spread across any of them. But there's executing, which is about getting things done. There's strategic thinking, which is about processing and problem solving and being creative. Relating, glue and grease, holds people together. Influencing, catalyzes, multiplies, pushes things to really become more. The rarest of the 4 domains is influencing themes. One of the rarest themes out of the 31 million people I think now have taken Clifton Strengths, one of the rarest themes is significance,
Oh,
which you have at number 4.
oh no.
Interestingly enough. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's great. Command is pretty rare, which I have in my top 5 as well. That's probably why I like you so much, is that the significance theme, and so significance as a theme, by the way, the best way to think about Clifton Strengths themes is ingredients in a recipe. The proportions are never the same. You don't have equal portions of in any recipe at any given moment. It's never all equal amounts of the same one. So we kind of have our favorite ingredients that are our go-to, but they all kind of mix, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
But significance says, what will they say about us when we're dead? I have significance at number 6 on my list. Like, what are they going to say about us when we're dead? What have we published, created, or done? But also, when it comes to influencing other people, we can pick through everything they're doing and be like, yeah, that's all kind of garbage. That's the vital thing. You know what I'm saying? It's the ability to kind of see through the fluff and spot the thing that is significant or lasting. And so if I'm prepared for that, especially if I have influencing themes, I'm like, oh, bring it. Bring it all day long. Because you just saved me the time of having to do trial and error. Oh, Tanya, tell me what works. Oh, that's amazing. If I actually don't believe in my own significance, I will ignore the fact that you're calling out the thing that is significant and be upset about the thing that you're overlooking. I'll actually critique you for not wanting all the other pieces when you're like, hey, because especially focus as well. Focus is a theme of priorities. Once priorities are clear, you're like, well, you just said you wanted this, this, and this. Okay, well, you may find, I'm not telling you this is true, but you may find. With focus, you're like, okay, you told me these are your priorities. Cool, I'm just answering the question. Yeah, of everything, yeah, that's crap. Focus on that, that'll get you the job. And they're like, but my heart was set on this, and my uncle told me that when I was 12 that I should love to do this part. And you're like, that's great, but you said your priority was this, focus, significance. Isn't this what you want?
Right.
Do you find that kind of directness, does that resonate at all?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is typically like sort of the way in which I mentor is essentially like, if you want X, do Y. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that is the significance one sort of stood out to me and was kind of funny because in my course reviews, since we were just on that topic, there's sort of a theme that comes up in my course reviews every now and then where a student will say that I am unqualified.
Really?
Yes. And that specific comment, is just uniquely designed to hurt me.
Right.
And I think it's because of the significance. I think it's because of that significance,
that's so
part of my personality. Yeah, that I was.
And so they write you're unqualified, basically ignoring your body of work?
I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? It's unqualified, not to toot my own horn or anything, but
the research is pretty clear. The research, the work.
I have a PhD in genetics and these papers and things and experience.
Yep.
And so, but that just sort of doing the CliftonStrengths, that stuck out to me because I was like, oh my gosh, that's why that specifically gets under my skin,
Yeah. Well, and if I'm you with significance, I'm going, and why am I wasting my time? I'm like, is it significant for me to be teaching someone who doesn't think I'm qualified? I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm like, why waste my time with people who don't think I'm qualified? This is ridiculous.
Right. So that's my whole teaching journey is I'm like, okay, for a certain cohort of students, right? This is not working. How can I strike a balance more between challenge and encourage? That still feels true to me. You know what I mean? Well, true to how I relate to people. But
yeah, because ultimately I think it'd be interesting to go. I think you can be encouraging, potentially, in a way. My thought would be is that finding a way to go. Okay, look, it's not my job to be different, but to go. Hey, listen, this is how I like to encourage. If you need something different, fine, ask me. I'll give you. If you need more than one point, but knowing. I think being so clear about who you are and how you work, that you basically put the keys in their hands and say, okay, I want to help you out. You're my postdoc and I'm trying to mentor you. I really love to drive your priorities. Now, just so you know, part of my gift is I'll get really fixated on those. I'm going to give you super clear feedback. How do you like to have that? One of the things, a coach of mine, Johan, who is a good friend, but I hired as my own coach a couple years ago and we partner together now. One of the things he taught our team is this idea of feedback. And one of the things, we have a 7-step process that we're like, hey, give feedback these ways. One of the things that I'm like, duh, but of course, but brilliant, was one, ask permission, which is not shocking.
Okay, that is, it is, it's funny because people have done that to me. They've said, are you in a mindset to receive feedback right now? And I've never employed that, but it is such a wonderful way to open the conversation.
It's and so when he said it, I was like, okay, it's so simple. And I'm like, I can't tell the last time I did it. Where I was like, I should ask, is there, but I don't hit all of them, but there's a couple, but one, I was thinking, he's like, one, ask for feedback. But I thought it was number 2 or 3 on this list. But it was, if they say yes, tie their feedback to their priorities, not yours. And as a coach, especially a command coach, I will naturally, because influencing themes and significance, we're more likely to see even better than they do. And so what happens is like we're suddenly shaping them and they feel the shaping. Well, if they're out of lost and they're happy to be moldable, then fine, it works out. But if they're not, or they're unclear, what happens? It can be unsettling. And so I found, hey, can I give you some? Would you mind? I had some thoughts. Well, you open some feedback, and they say yes. The next thing be like, well, last time we chatted, you mentioned this, this, and this, or when you filled out your focus or your priority for the next 6 months of this, is to do this by this point. Well, based on that, can I either ask questions or can I offer thoughts? But they're instantly more open if they're reversing backwards from their priority to yours.
Right.
And the challenge for us is that us, meaning people with influencing themes of like significance, command, and self-assurance, we're very quick. We're like, let's not waste time. Because if it was you and me, we just want it fast. We're like, anybody who can cut through the noise for us.
Right.
Don't even ask permission, knock down my door, save me the time, deliver it to my house. It's a different approach. And so finding that way to go, well, this is how I show up. And if you need more encouragement, you need me to put that in with this, okay, cool, I can deliver that too. I just need to know that's a priority for you and asking them, hey, I really function on your priorities. How best do you like to receive feedback even? Because you'll build them. I mean, you have Achiever and Relator. Like you do authenticity very, very well. Relators are not friendly. They're authentic. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so people that will give you time, FaceTime, you know what? I'm like, the students who say you're unqualified, you probably can't pick out of a lineup half the time. But the ones who actually resonate, Relator typically does well with smaller class sizes and smaller groups. We found that in teachers. Class sizes, survey classes are exhausting because your brain doesn't give yourself away that way. You're like authentic. And those who dependably show up, that you can slowly even micro build a relationship with them, you'll better read. In fact, I doubt few people would say that you're not encouraging if they actually interact with you. Relators are typically known for being authentic. It is those who are unknown to them who don't, with significance, they'll take the one off you say more so than hearing you in the relationship. Because relators, they need a season of time typically to connect, especially teachers. Small class sizes, less than 20, but especially groups less than 12 are great. So study groups and those are brilliant. Because your brain is so authentic, it can't simply add on the relational connections. The relational permutations get too big, greater than 12, they say.
That's awesome. No, that's the other thing I've been sort of struggling with. It's actually something that I tweaked this coming semester. I reduced my course size to 15 from 40. My other course was 96. And I capped them. I brought them way down to 15, and I was like, just sort of trying to replicate what we do in my lab with my actual students in the classroom, which is essentially like learning by doing together. Right? Like, let's get into it together. But that's super helpful.
I'll be shocked. I would love to hear the change in your teaching reviews and scores just on the class size thing.
Right.
Because that alone changes. Because because Relator is a common theme. So the most common themes in the world, Relator is one of the top 5. But knowing that means the majority of your students, probably better than 60% of the students themselves, will have Relator. The research around Relator in students in high and college is the relationship with the teacher has more impact on the final grade than the subject matter. And they get angry that in groups bigger than 15, they can't create the relationship with the teacher because they, quote, don't feel understood.
Right. And I get that feedback all the time, too, that they're not getting essentially like the individualized attention or like building the relationship in the way that
you're also accused of having favorites, by the way.
Always, yes.
Relators are accused of having favorites because their brains have a shorthand with students they've ever seen before or students that remind them of other students. And so your brain is still trying to give out the authenticity to the bigger group, and it doesn't know how to do it, but they can feel it, but you can't do anything about it because your brain simply goes, wait a minute, I haven't spent enough time with them to be able to give them that shorthand that I have with students A, B, and C. Right. And so relators, so I say all this just to prove you'll be accused of having favorites and you'll question yourself. Well, maybe they are favorites because I do like, honestly, teachers of Relator are always accused of having favorites when the class size gets too big.
Yeah, no, that happens to me too. And then I think, oh darn, it's such a shame because I, was really enjoying, working with
I really liked them,
whatever,
right?
you know what I mean? I really like them. They came to my office hours all the time, or,
Yep.
so that's awesome to know that the ways in which I've been thinking about tweaking things are actually maybe a little bit tailored to what will be most successful for me.
Yeah.
Because the way that I think about like my personality type is like two sort of like dualities is like I want to be in charge, but I also want to help.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I want to
Yeah.
be in charge, but I want to help you do the thing that you want to do. You
Yeah.
know?
Because leaving a legacy, because that is, 'cause Tanya, significance is a big theme. Like that, like, am I helping you? Am I shaping? Am I having an impact on you? Right? Like that
Yeah.
ability to be like, you know what? I don't want to just educate. You see this all the time, I'm sure. We like to say a lot of times in coaching, we're over-informed and under-transformed. Right? In a chat GPT world where getting the answer ends up being the answer, in an AI world, we ignore the fact that neurological connections are only built through struggle and repetition.
Right.
And application of it, which is
Right.
why the lab is going to be so much more critical than just finding some answer. And that ability for you to kind of go like, hey, listen, you can hear this and learn it and great, but like, is it shaping how you show up? Significance is going to know that. What won't last? I don't want to waste our time on things that won't last. Hey, let me help you create something that lasts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And so being able to, and so even in the midst of that class sizes, I think when you navigating how to make your success, because you're on a tenure track, you're going to stick around for a while, how to make your teaching success a big piece of that. And the mentorship thing as well, I think tying it into, hey, how do I, just even being more direct and open with the mentee of, look, I want to help you navigate to X. How clear are you on what you want? And what's the best way and how do you like to have that? Because you actually have the ability with that learner relators can self-educate. They can teach themselves anything. Give them time, they can figure it out.
Yeah.
And in fact, you'd find joy in finding creative ways to meet their need. The worst part will be when you feel like you're falling down trying to mind read.
Oh my gosh. There was a question in there was essentially how like whether or not you get frustrated with people who are suffering with indecision. You know what I mean? Or sort of whether or not you get frustrated with people who don't know what they want.
Right.
And that is part of it for me. Not necessarily that I have always known, you know what I mean, that I wanted to be a professor from this specific college or like in, you know what I mean, this discipline.
No.
That's not at all how I see, goals. I think of myself more as like micro ambitious, which is like I have the next thing. I know the next thing that's ahead of me, but it's like immediately in front of me. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't have a runway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so focus is also a fairly unique theme in that it is the ability to, and so it's not when I say know what you want, again, not big vision, but it's simply like, a target is helpful. Because when everything is equal, then nothing's priority. So the way to think about focus is going, my brain is tuned to shut out noise once the priority becomes clear. And people with focus, sometimes will say, well, that's shocking to me because there's times when I want to do nothing. And I'll be like, that's because everything seems equal and nothing seems clear. When something suddenly becomes clear and you're like, it jars it, you're like, oh, that's the thing I do next. And then you're like, I'm on it.
Right. Yeah.
But if you find that you're in a log jam, multiple priorities have sudden hit equanimity, as they say, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, something can't be right. And that's when ultimately people with focus, I say, you need to do anything from taking a walk to asking a random stranger to talking to somebody that can advise you, anything to bounce things off of that'll somehow give one a benefit of the other or a different priority. And even the smallest shift, you're like, well, I can do that one next. Now, the achiever in you, which is hard work every day that starts at 0, check the box, get it done. And so you may find at times you're shocked by how little you want to dive into, but you'll still feel the need to be active. But once the priorities are clear, you're like, man, I'm on a train.
Yep. Yeah. And it's funny because I don't think I really had that until I had kids. Like, I think before I had kids, time was sort of like not a valuable resource, especially during your PhD, because you're not really taking coursework and it is very like
You're
open
paid to think, study, and write.
yeah, like you're paid to think, study, and write, and you can do that at 10 p.m. You can do that at 2 a.m. You can do it whenever you
Right.
want, right? And you're sort of on your own like journey. Um,
Yeah.
but time didn't really become a scarce resource for me until I became a parent. And so now, like I joke that if you give me 30 minutes of like uninterrupted like child free time, I'm gone. Like I'm like on to the next thing. I'm doing something
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you how did you navigate? I mean, just there's so many. I have so many women that I talk to in coaching where they're professionals and
mhm.
love their kids, but one or a couple things. One, I feel like my brain went to jello. They'll say, and they're like, okay, I love my child, but I have a brain that still needs to function and needs to be creative and navigate that piece and stay stimulated and that kind of thing. But also figuring out the priorities for you as a professional, as a woman, deciding, you know what, where kids fit into the equation of working on tenure track and all these things like that. Was that something where you're like, we know we want children, we're gonna step into it and simply take it as it comes? Or did you have to, how much thought, what was the pressure for you that you're like, these are questions we had to navigate and answer before we're like, okay, we're ready to start our family?
Yeah, I mean that was sort of a big transition point because the type of research that I do is field research, right? So I do non-model genomics, which basically means like I'm looking for wildlife, which typically has a
You're in
field
bat
component.
caves,
I'm going, yes,
literally.
yes, I'm in the jungle. like so I'm typically going somewhere very remote to collect non-lethally samples from the animals, then bringing them back to the lab and sequencing them and the type of stuff. And so there's always been sort of a field expedition element of what I do. And that's such a joyous part of my research program that like I never want to lose that. And so thinking about how a family would fit into that was definitely like an unknown, I would say.
Yeah.
But Toby and I, my husband, we were never like, you know what I mean, super baby people. Like we were
We're
never
not babies. Yeah.
right. We're not baby crazy people, but I think both of us are very motivated by FOMO. And so the thing that sort of pushed us over the edge into like, okay, we're going to do this was recognizing a couple things. One of them was that it was never going to be the right time. It was never going to be a convenient time in my career or his to have kids.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like if there's no good time, then the best time is right now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that was the first recognition was essentially there is no readiness, right? This isn't going to be
Right.
convenient.
Right.
And then the second thing was just kind of prioritizing, I guess, like the experiences that we wanted to have as a family and realizing
Yeah.
that like it is going to be really hard to take two kids into the field and to like coordinate sabbaticals and that type of thing. But we're going to do it
Yeah.
anyway and we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
So that was the main thing. And then I would say the third piece of this was really community. And so Toby and I both have FOMO, like fear of missing out, majorly.
Yeah.
And all of our sort of peers around us were having kids. And a big part of parenting, sort of as like a big life experience, was like, if we're going to do this thing, we want to do it in community, right? Like we want to do it in community in the trenches with like our other friends who have kids under 5.
Yeah.
And so just jumping on the bandwagon from that perspective, like gave us a real sense of community around like the things that are good and also really hard about parenting, especially at this career stage.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad that we did it when we did. Yeah.
That's so great. As I hear you talk to even like the relator, so the community FOMO. It's not just FOMO of like, hey, I'm missing out on these opportunities. Like I have FOMO too, which means I want to go jump off cliffs and skydive, and so I'm not gonna have kids. But the community based, that's that relator part of like our core relationships are having experiences that we want to share in, which is kind of really exciting.
Yep.
But what I love, even when I hear, and not just I'm a fan of y'all's, but significance as a theme kind of starts with me and it works backwards. I just did a talk in San Diego for the San Diego Foundation and the talk was, what do you do when the world's run off the map? And it was this idea of the importance of resilience over resistance and how in the 90s, threat resistance to things that are going to come at us. Okay, this is bad, then stop fishing this much. Nuclear weapons, stop this. And realizing that while you need to know the threats, the best thing possible though is to build in system resilience. Like the best threat to biological terror. Like I talked about this whole researcher who was like, listen, guys, the best combating of biological terror weapons is comprehensive healthcare. Right? It's like resilience in the systems, and that resilience, meaning I don't need to catalog everything ahead of time as much as build in, we can figure it out. We're going to look back in the end that we can figure it out. And so significance does this from a legacy perspective of, you know what, I don't really know everything. I do know that when the story ends, it will be, we did the best we could and we're glad we did it because why? Because this is who Toby and I have decided to be and this is our family.
Yep.
And so it's so interesting the way even that significance plays into your ability to go, if I know the reason why is there, and I trust that we can be resilient, I would lean into that is that things that seem easy to you are things that I would encourage you to think, if it doesn't seem clear yet, I'm not confident that that we have the resilience to end that way. And if it is, if I do feel clear, that the resilience is there. So it almost becomes a way to navigate of like, should I push into this? I'm unsure. If it's I'm not confident it's going to end well or we're resilient enough for it, then the answer is no.
Right.
Because things that you do know, you'd be like, oh yeah, we're bulletproof. It doesn't matter what comes, we can take it. It's not about having the answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's sort of it's a mindset as well that like I think the most important thing is showing up when you're not feeling your best, right? Like if you have the mentality that like you're actually not going to feel your best every single day and you're going to show up anyways and do your best. You know what I mean? Like that's all that matters, right? Because realistically, I think a lot of the big moments, when I think about like the big moments in my life and in my career, like one of them was interviewing for tenure track jobs. So like dream job came out, I applied, got an interview on campus, was freshly postpartum, wrote to the interview committee and said, hey, just so you know, I'm on maternity leave with my first child. I'm going to bring my whole family to my interview. You know what I mean?
You're like, there will be diaper bags in tow, in case you're wondering.
This is like a litmus test. I was like, you cool with that? And they were like, yes, absolutely. But just rising to the occasion of doing a very strenuous, I think it was a 3-day interview on campus with my infant, you know what I mean, in tow.
Yeah.
Underslept, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing, like
Totally.
so much of life, I just think comes down to rising to the occasion when you're not actually feeling your best. Like those
the ability on the days when you're not, it's not about the days when everything works great. You're like, no, it's the days when I'm not feeling my best and the ability to still show up.
Yes,
That's
it's
so
the
good.
days when you're not feeling best and you show up anyways that I think have a huge impact on the outcome of.
Has that always been there though for you? Like, I mean, is that like something you learned? You're like, okay, after all these years of the hard work and the field work and the study, was like, wow, I'm strong? Or has it always, is it, a child, an immigrant, a woman, what do you feel like gave you that place? How does somebody tap into, yep, you know what? I still just show up.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me personally, it was like, being a first generation child of immigrant parents who were incredibly hardworking and had sacrificed a lot, for us to have our childhood. But I work with students in this too. And I think of it in terms of like building their self-efficacy, right? And like your self-efficacy is like that sentiment that you can do hard things, right? And there's micro ways in which I think even in the course of a semester, we can build on those skills in terms of just like getting out of your way. And then when you actually do hit a roadblock, like taking a moment and then rising to the occasion. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of that is like, those tools of regulating your emotions, you know what I mean? Dealing with frustration is like such a theme that I work with.
Oh my gosh.
With all of my mentees, because like science is just, it's repetitive failure. You know what I mean? Like science is just, we're just constantly failing in some capacity, but like I call it failing forward. Where like you're failing,
falling down as long as your body length goes in the right direction, not forward, not back.
Like you're failing forward. You're failing, but you're making progress, right? And so that sort of resiliency to get back up and continue trying, dealing with your own frustration, I think is something that anyone can work on any day of the week under any circumstances. It's not necessarily something that you had to have inherited from your parents or from your upbringing. It's just
Yeah.
it's something you can and should be working on in the every day. That's my thought.
It's, I just went back, I think you saw, I just went back to Patagonia a couple weeks ago and met up with Roberto and we hiked a few days. And somebody's like, why did you do it? And I'm like, you've been there long before. And Roberto and I went off into some different valleys this time. And it's funny, I had this phrase in my head, which I'm saying a lot these days, is I'm realizing that confidence is something remembered, not created. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to turn 51, which turned 51 yesterday. And I was like, man, am I still in shape or not? I'm like, man, I used to be able to do this, and I did that with you guys, and we did the circuit. I haven't done the circuit in a while. And actually, I did it again since we saw you. And somebody said, well, Mike, are you clear that your hiking days are more behind you than in front of you? And there was something about it. I'm like, I wonder if I could do it again. And as soon as I got on the trail, and it was hard, but I was actually I did great. I'm feeling pretty good. But it was this idea of, oh, I have the memory of when I did it before. Oh, I remember this. And how much the small moments, even like somebody an achiever like you, the actions that go, look, I have the lifetime of evidence to back up this theory that I'm strong, that I'm resilient. Oh yeah, this is what happens. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to fail 45 times in this experiment because then, you know what, there was contamination in the sample. Yep, we gotta go all the way back to the Amazon because the samples got contaminated on the way home. Yep, next time we won't put the swab in our teeth when we're trying to close the pack. Right? Like it's all these things, and I think, but just to tap into that, because I talk to a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s, who will tell me, you know what, I've been trained that if it breaks or it's frustrating, it means I didn't do it wrong, so I should do something else. And and frustration as something to push through, to survive, to go, oh, no. Failure, not the first time, the first 10 times, actually is not a sign that you should take a different direction. Yeah. It's not like we've been trained that we should get traction, and I'm having to, oh no, I thought that's how I'm navigating. Oh, clearly, that didn't work, I should move. Are you finding that too, that helping people understand, wait, frustration is legitimately just part of the process?
Yeah.
That's a big gap.
Yes, that is one of the main lessons of like my course. You know what I mean? Like my course, for example, for a lot of students, it's their first time doing high performance computing, right? So it's their first time coding. And coding, I mean, you can invent a million different new ways to break some code. And so that's like, do I care if you leave my course? You know what I mean? Being able to code a solution to whatever, you know what I mean, assignment. I don't care. What I hope that you've gained is essentially just an ounce more of self-efficacy, right? Just an ounce more of frustration tolerance where you can leave that and say, you know what, this question's really hard or this problem's really hard, but I know that I can give it a try. And if I fail, right, I can take a little break and come back later, renewed and try again. That's sort of the life skill, right? Because not everybody that I teach is actually going to be a biologist. I can promise you that, right?
But it's so important what you're saying, because even as you think about mentoring, like you as a scientist, it's a whole different experience. You have a different frame of reference. Because when we coach, we do a thing where we start with a vision of who you want to be at your death, and we do an obituary, a 10-year, 5-year, 1 year, and then we work back on a 1-year plan. And we do this whole thing. And so you have a vision gap, and we say, okay, you have a 12-month vision, and you have reality. Now we need to close the gap. Right. My buddy Johan loves to say, we close the gap with HEAT, which is habits, experiments, attitude, and time. Okay. So what are the tiny little consistent things we can do? Habits. Experiments. What are things we can try? Attitude. What's our mental posture? Time. Be patient. He came up with that, and I'm like, dude, you're brilliant. I'm going to use that all the time. I love it. But here's the thing. When you're talking, I'm going, you know what? The amount of time I have to explain to people, experiments aren't supposed to work. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, for this month, you said you were going to do this, way, and this. I'm like, okay, remember, so you got your habits down. You're going to consistently reach out to these people to try to do this. What's something randomly you're going to try? And they're like, well, I tried this before and it didn't work. I'm like, oh, and I don't care. What are you randomly going to try? And I was like, experiments are things you do simply for the gathering of information. That's my layman's stuff.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
That, in a world that is not taught that, they're shocked by, wait a minute, you're saying I should do things just for the info? Yes. Go pitch that thing, create that thing, and if nothing else, learn how it feels for it to suck. Yeah. And the sun still comes up tomorrow. But this idea of habits, experiments, attitude, and time, we have to teach, I'm having to have conversations with people about, guess what? This world needs you to experiment because you're closing yourself off to possibilities by your assumption that you have all the information having never done the experiment.
Yep. Yep. And like I think of experiments like not even just in the lab, but like I think of
No.
my like, my course as an experiment, right? Like I'm
Right.
trying something new, and when people are like, "What are you going to do with your course? What are you going to do with this?" I say, "I'm going to run an experiment, and the basis of that experiment is that I'm going to try something, and there is no need for me to do it ever again." Right. And there's nothing
Right.
stopping me from going back to the way I was doing it before. Right. Like an
You're
experiment
like,
is
I'll
just
make my
one.
classes 96 kids again if I need to.
Yes. I say nothing's going to stop me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying something new, and I don't want to
Yeah.
be beholden from, you know what I mean? Like sort of the expectation that like, that's the way we're going to do it from now until
Yeah.
forever, or that you're making a change that can't be undone. An experiment is an experiment. It's a
Yeah.
gathering of knowledge. You're totally right about that. And the one thing that I find, especially with like career type moves, right, is like that fear of failure is essentially that like you're going to start failing and you're just going to be like in free fall, failing
Yeah.
until,
You'll never stop.
right? It'll never stop. And so one thing that I think of, especially for students and trainees, is essentially putting up some guardrails around failure, which is like, I want you to try, 4 different things, or I want you to apply to 4 different faculty positions, right? And setting sort of a safeguard, at which point, like you can think of it as like a checkpoint, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to try these 4 things, and if I straight up fail 4 times straight, I'm going to come back and revisit. Or like I have a plan for how to take a pause before I move forward, right? But just putting around some very simple guardrails around quote unquote failure can be a really nice, it's a comfort, right? It's
Totally.
a comfort to know that there will be a point at which I reassess what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I just hung up. I did another podcast recording about 2 hours ago, and I'm doing a 4 episode series just with college grads. So they're 1 year, or they're 18 months or less right out of college. And so I was talking to her about this, and she's trying to break into more behavioral kind of health, behavioral science and support. Like she loves training and coaching, but wants to like be almost like a student advisor kind of thing. Right. But anyway, so she's starting from scratch. Only has an undergrad. And so I was like, well, why don't you give yourself a season to go after the on-ramp to the area? But then, okay, if you get to October, we're like, how about, okay, now I go, here's the vehicle that's going to keep my bills paid and my cell phone paid while I'm doing the things that are going to give me the experience. I'll get a certificate. I'll freelance. I'll do whatever in the space, and knowing when that shifts of what you're looking for, or that shift of those pieces. And even around failure, I don't know if this is useful for your students at all, but like when it comes to reframing, when I have things that happen, I think every coach should have a coach, and I've had one over the years. And we and I were talking a couple of years back, about a year and a half ago, and something happened, blew up a situation, and it was more interpersonal, and I was so annoyed, and I'm like complaining, and he's like, okay, cool, real quick, you're pretty drunk. How long do you want to stay drunk? And I was like, okay, unpack that for me. And so he taught me. He's actually Johan. He actually did the heat thing as well. He's like, just so you know, at points of failure, frustration, or whatever, you basically are emotionally drunk. We call it emotionally inebriated, right? Failure creates emotional inebriation. And he's like, and I'm complaining, and I'm telling the story. Oh, this person's a freaking idiot. And he's like, cool. By the way, you're totally right to be drunk and mad, upset, clearly. How long do you want to stay drunk? And I was like, and I literally said, I'm going to stay drunk until Tuesday. And he's like, cool, what would that look like? I said, I'm going to tell this freaking story to everybody. I'm going to complain. I'm going to do it. He's like, cool. And what happens on Wednesday? I'm like, I'm going to sit down and make a plan and figure out how to show up in this moment based on who I am, not based on who they are. But he taught me in that space, and now I've learned it, and I use it a lot, is that same thing when I'm overly happy. It's going to be great. He's like, you're clearly drunk. I don't think you should like sell this move there because that one client said yes. Like it's a bad idea. But I'll ask myself, I'll put myself on a timer, kind of like what you're describing with your students. Where I'll be like, you know what? It sucks to have applied for 4 postdocs and didn't work. Obviously, and they're complaining, like complain, feel it. Okay, cool. How long do you want to feel it? Give yourself a timer. Great. Then what? But like honoring the emotional inebriation. I'm like, you need to be inebriated. It makes the pain
Yeah.
tolerable.
Yeah,
But I'm
like
like,
honoring
I
the
literally said, I'm gonna be drunk until Tuesday.
until
Like,
Tuesday. I love that. No, totally. Like part of it is like honoring the feeling, right? And
yes.
a lot of the frustration or the disappointment or whatever, you know what I mean? You put yourself out there for these positions and you feel rejection, you feel disappointment, you feel frustration,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like honoring the feeling before moving forward, I think is a big part of the toolbox, honestly. I do.
Completely. And even what you're saying, like the honor the feeling thing. One last piece before I don't want to steal your entire morning, but I think Duhill, I can't think of his name. New book just came out called Super Communicators. He's a pop culture researcher guy. But fascinating though is that he's talking about factors of certain things. People that are incredible communicators, what do they do best? I was thinking about this even earlier when you were talking about trying to give feedback to students. And one of the things he talks about is like, there's some research that'll say every conversation comes down to the person you're talking to wants one of three things. And help me, hug me, hear me. Basically. So in fact, he was talking about how in schools, some educators are trying to help kids navigate that because they don't have the framework yet. And they'll teach them. So, hey, they'll come to, well, Mrs. Jones, whatever. And you're like, you know what? And they'll be, okay, real quick, do you need to be helped, hugged, or heard? And they teach them to go, okay, well, actually, I just need you to hear me because I need to tell you my story because so-and-so did this to me. Or hug me. I actually need you to tell me that you think it hurts. Or help me get my ball back. Whatever the piece is. But it's this idea of going, oh, wait. Even that simple little model, and I'm a sucker for a really useful model.
Yeah, I love
I'm going,
that.
if I'm like, okay, do they need to be helped, hugged, or heard right now? And so I will honestly, in some ways, ask them, do you need feedback? Do you need me to reflect? Do you need me just to listen? And kind of, trying to be there. And that helped, kind of giving that as a mentor. For you, just looking at your profile, Tanya, with Achiever, Relator, Learner, there's no hard work, relationship, or thing you won't be able to figure out. The thing that will likely ever get in the way is when either you're clear before they are, your significance sees the clarity before they do, and you almost need to wait for them to catch up, or you see the mismatch in priorities. If the priorities and your faith in the long-term vision of a thing is clear, the how almost becomes irrelevant. You're like, yes, relator, learner, achiever, hard work, authenticity, self-education, you're gonna figure it out. And so I would just encourage you to listen to yourself of, I should do as much work to go, you know what, my priority's here. I mean, you literally called and said, look, I want this job so bad, I'm on maternity leave, I'm gonna come in, but simultaneously, I'm not gonna come in and bring my family, so both things matter. I'm gonna give up my maternity leave and drag my diaper bag and family with me, right?
Yeah. No,
And so
that's authenticity, right? Is I was like, and when I actually went in to interview, it's funny because some of my friends who are professors and who are mothers were like, "Well, I don't know if you want to tell them, that you're a new mom and whatever." And I was like, "Not tell them." I was
Are you
like,
kidding
"This
me?
is a litmus test. Like, are you cool with this or not?" Because
Yep.
I'm bringing my authentic whole self.
Yep.
You know,
But
so
small class sizes, though, and clarity of priorities and clarity of legacy, the rest just falls in place. Any pauses those kind of themes. Is there anything that came up, any question or anything in your head that we haven't touched on or hit before we kind of bring this in for a landing? But I'd love to. I'm not in a rush, but I'd love to chat if you've got
no, I'm
anything I
also
haven't brought up.
no rush at all. I think that's been super helpful, honestly, just thinking about like Relator and my authenticity and the things that I've been struggling with,
Yep.
especially in the classroom, and thinking about the tweaks that I've made and hoping that they will be sort of,
Yeah.
a path towards not just like being a better educator and a mentor, but also feeling like more fulfilled myself. You know what I mean? In stepping into the classroom and feeling like we're doing something together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah, and I think keeping that in front of you too, of like, hey, every year that I get through this, I'm earning the right to work with more and more people who have more, who are thinking more and more long term, like I am. Like really coming. It's not just basic students who are trying to navigate the postdoc, but you're like, wait, I can even become more refined. I can tighten. I can really invest my legacy even more in helping more people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tanya, I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on here with me today.
Thank you so much.
And Oh, by the way, I really do suggest diving into the top 5 report. There's some good stuff in there. That's the one that's custom written. So the top 5, there's some interesting things in there you might find. Not the signature report, the top 5 one. That's the one that's custom written to all 177 responses.
Okay.
For those of you watching along at home, always appreciate you guys joining me. Reviews, preferably 5-star ones are good. Follows, likes, shares, those are things. All 20 of you who've been watching so far, you're amazing. Love you. Want to let you know we are doing a free thing called the Navigation Brief, which is basically a mini version of this without you. There's a link below in the description. If you want to go ahead, you'll send me your top 5 strengths themes, and we will then put together a little brief, a couple emails, and I'll give you a 5-minute, my take on like where you are, something you're navigating, and how you might use your strengths to do that. So click on the Navigation Brief. Love to chat with you and help you out. Thanks so much, Tanya, for being here. See you all next time.